Black CEO denied first class. 25 minutes later, he shut down the airline's entire system. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Sir, step aside. First class isn't for people like you. The sentence cracked through the terminal like a slap made of steel and fluorescent light. Heads snapped up. Conversations stuttered mid-word. Even the rolling luggage seemed to fall silent on the polished tile floor. At Gate 7, under a halo of cool white LEDs, a moment of modern travel turned into a public tribunal. He stood still. A tall black man in a charcoal coat, posture calm, eyes steady. His carry-on was sleek, his ticket legitimate, his presence composed. Yet the gate agent's tone sliced into the air with the kind of confidence born from habit, the kind of habit that misjudges a man before reading his name. "Sir," she repeated, louder now, as if volume could substitute authority. "I said step aside. We need to verify your credentials." Passengers glanced over their shoulders, pretending not to stare, but staring all the same. Phones tilted subtly, lenses lifting like mechanical animals hungry for spectacle. A woman in a cream-colored turtleneck whispered to her husband. He probably wandered into the wrong line. Another, clutching a first-class boarding pass like a badge, chuckled under her breath. The man didn't move. Behind the counter, the agent crossed her arms, an exaggerated sigh escaping as if she were the one being inconvenienced. "Sir, I'm not going to repeat myself again. This area is reserved for premium passengers." He raised his ticket, an unmistakable first-class boarding pass, embossed, verified, scanned. "I am a premium passenger," he said quietly. That quietness, controlled, precise, unwavering, made the surrounding noise collapse. It wasn't the tone of a man pleading for entry. It was the tone of a man who already knew who he was, and who he wasn't going to explain himself to. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Elijah. The gate agent scoffed. "Look, Elijah." She mispronounced his last name without looking up. "We've had issues lately with people trying to sneak upgrades they didn't pay for. So unless you want security involved, step to the side and let real first-class passengers through. Real. The word hit harder than the rest. A quiet murmur rippled through the watching crowd. Someone smirked. Someone else rolled their eyes. A teenager lifted their phone a little higher, angling for a better shot. Elijah didn't flinch. The agent snapped her fingers toward the security booth. "Greg, can we get a verification over here?" Passenger is refusing to comply. Security rose from his stool, already wearing the expression of someone who'd made up his mind before hearing the story. He walked toward Elijah with slow, deliberate steps, the performance of authority sharpened by assumption. "Sir," Greg said, "I'm going to need you to come to the side with me for additional screening." "For what?" Elijah asked, still calm. Greg hesitated. Not because he had an answer, but because he didn't. The gate agent rushed to fill the silence. "For irregularities. Has not matching the profile of our usual first-class clientele." There it was, the sentence no one said out loud, finally said out loud. A woman in a pearl blazer laughed nervously. "Well, she's not wrong." Elijah's jaw didn't tighten, his gaze didn't sharpen. He simply breathed once slow, deliberate, as if steadying himself before something only he knew was coming. Behind him, the terminal screens flickered with the next wave of departing flights. Announcements echoed across the hall. Boarding groups called in neat, practiced cadence. But here, at Gate 7, time seemed to bend around him, holding its breath. The agent thrust her hand out. "ID. Now!" As Elijah reached for his wallet, a businessman in a navy suit shook his head. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "People need to understand boundaries. Boundaries. Rules. Lines drawn between who belongs and who doesn't." Elijah handed over his ID. The agent gave it a full forensic inspection, turning it, squinting, lifting it to the light, the same ritual that 3 passengers before him never endured. Greg stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, ready to escalate at the slightest cue. Passengers shifted, annoyed, impatient, entertained. A small cluster formed, hungry for a scene. The air tightened. The lights felt harsher. The gate felt smaller. Elijah stayed perfectly still, not angry, not shaken, simply waiting, holding a silence that felt more powerful than the noise surrounding him. And for the first time, a subtle shift rippled across the space, a tension in the air like the moment before a storm changes direction. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet, undeniable warning, the kind you only notice when it's already too late, the kind that says, "You just underestimated the wrong man." The terminal didn't return to normal, not really, it only pretended to. People resumed their half-finished conversations, but their voices were thinner, stretched over curiosity like plastic over a wound. Every few seconds, someone's eyes slid back toward Gate 7, drawn by an invisible thread to the man who refused to shrink. Elijah stood exactly where they'd left him, still, composed, centered as if the chaos orbiting him had no permission to enter his space. A mother pulling a stroller slowed down, pretending to adjust the blanket just so she could watch. 2 college students whispered loudly enough to be heard, "Bro, this is wild," while recording in portrait mode. A businessman with a glossy boarding pass shot Elijah a look that sat somewhere between pity and disdain. It wasn't a crowd, not yet, but it was becoming one. The fluorescent lights above hummed, flickering in faint pulses as if sensing the shift. Farther down the concourse, an espresso machine hissed, a sharp burst of steam slicing the air. But around Gate 7, the soundscape softened the world, holding a breath it didn't realize it had taken. The gate agent, still wearing the brittle confidence of someone who thought Shed won, slammed Elijah's ID against the counter. "It's always the same story," she muttered to Greg. "They think a nice coat and a bar-coded ticket make them first class." Greg grunted in agreement, though his eyes said he wasn't sure. Something about Elijah unsettled him. Maybe it was the stillness. Maybe it was the way Elijah's gaze never drifted, never darted, never begged. Maybe it was the hint, the quiet, near-invisible edge of a man who could afford patience. Behind them, the boarding door clicked as the jet bridge reset. A low mechanical groan rolled through the metal interior, echoing faintly like a warning from inside the plane itself. Passengers felt it before they heard it. A shift, a drop. The atmosphere cooled, barely perceptible but undeniable, like the moment a weather front rolls in, unseen but certain. A woman in an oversized scarf whispered, "Do you feel that?" Her partner shrugged, but goosebumps climbed his arm anyway. Cameras rose again, not aggressively, almost instinctively, as though the devices themselves knew something cinematic was happening. Screens blinked to life. Red recording circles glowed like watchful eyes. The crowd became its own silent jury, waiting for a verdict they didn't understand. Elijah didn't move. He let the silence stretch. He let the stares gather. He let the space tighten around him like a lens pulling focus. Greg finally broke. "We're running a deeper check," he said, trying for authority but landing somewhere closer to uncertainty. "You'll wait over here, sir." Elijah looked at him, a single calm glance, and Greg stopped mid-gesture. Just stopped. Something in Elijah's eyes made his throat tighten. Not threat, not defiance. Something colder, sharper, like someone examining a problem he already solved. The gate agent didn't notice. She marched back toward the computer, tapping angrily at the keys. "System's lagging," she complained, "probably because we're dealing with to the sentence." She didn't need to. Everyone heard what she meant. A man in a tailored vest shook his head disapprovingly. "Some people just can't accept their lane," a woman added. "He should be grateful they're even checking." Grateful. The word floated in the air like bad perfume. Elijah's posture didn't shift, but something in the room did, subtle, electric, gathering. The fluorescent lights dimmed a shade. A baggage cart beeped twice in the distance, then stalled as if the airport itself felt the tension. The terminal's big digital departures board flickered. Once, twice, then stabilized. No one connected the dots yet. But the universe had just cleared its throat. The gate agent finally looked up from her screen, frustrated. System freeze. Perfect. Just perfect. Greg, tell him he'll need to wait until we reboot. Could be 20 minutes. 20 minutes. The smallest smile ghosted across Elijah's lips. Not satisfaction, not spite. Recognition, as if Head been waiting for that exact moment. He checked the time. 25 minutes before takeoff. 25 minutes before the entire airline would learn who they'd tried to humiliate. Behind him, the cluster of onlookers tightened, breathless with anticipation, even if they didn't know why. The freeze frame had arrived. The camera of the world had locked onto him. The room didn't know it yet, but the next move wouldn't belong to them. For a moment, the airport seemed suspended, a snow globe of white light, polished floors, and judgment held midair. Elijah stood at the center of it, still calm, still silent, still enduring the theater of assumptions playing out around him. But the story of who he truly was didn't begin at Gate 7. It began decades earlier, in a place much smaller, much harsher, and much less forgiving than any terminal lined with luxury boutiques. Elijah Grant was the child of a single mother who worked double shifts at a regional airport in Georgia, not as a pilot, not as an agent, as a janitor. He grew up watching people walk past her without a glance, dropping trash at her feet, speaking over her like she didn't exist. When he was old enough to carry a bucket, he helped her mop floors between arrivals and departures, weaving through crowds that treated him like part of the background. At 12, he asked her why people acted like she wasn't there. Her answer was soft, but carved into him like scripture. Baby, people only see what they decide you're allowed to be. Your job is to decide something different. He did. By 16, he was teaching himself to code in the break room on an old, donated laptop. By 21, Head built a prototype reservation engine faster than anything on the market. By 26, airlines were begging for access to his real-time data pipeline, the one that stopped double bookings, reduced cancellations, and synced global inventory across continents. He didn't inherit the industry. He rebuilt it. But Elijah was private. He never appeared in press releases, never attended ribbon cuttings. He let partners think he was a ghost in the machine, a signature on contract pages, a mind behind a closed door, a myth, not a man. Even now, the airline humiliating him at Gate 7 used his company's infrastructure. Its entire reservation backbone check-in kiosks, booking API, internal pricing interface, ran on Grant Systems Cloud. The airline didn't just rely on his work. They depended on him to exist. And tonight, of all nights, Elijah wasn't flying for leisure. He wasn't catching a vacation flight or a weekend retreat. He was on his way to San Francisco to close a $3.2 billion expansion deal, a merger that would give the airline exclusive access to his next-gen predictive load balancing system, a contract large enough to transform their future, a contract only one man could authorize. The same man they were treating as an intruder. Back in the terminal, the gate agent slammed her keyboard again. System still frozen. Of course, Greg tapped his earpiece. IT says, we're having trouble syncing with the reservation hub. Weird timing. Weird timing indeed. A businessman in an expensive coat grumbled. This is what happens when you let unqualified people slow down real customers. Real customers. Elijah exhaled once slow, measured, letting the memory of his mother's words settle like armor around him. People only see what they decide you're allowed to be. But the crowd didn't see the patents under his name. They didn't see the teams of engineers who waited for his voice. They didn't see the silent power that could darken every departure board in this terminal. All they saw was a black man in a first-class line they thought he didn't deserve to stand in. A teenage girl watching him from behind her phone whispered to her friend, "He doesn't seem scared at all." "No," her friend replied, watching Elijah's posture. "He looks like he's thinking." And he was. Not about the humiliation, not about the stares, not even about the injustice. He was thinking about the line between patience and permission and how thin that line had just become. Elijah slipped his phone from his coat pocket, screen dark, fingertips steady. He wasn't a man preparing to fight. He was a man preparing to decide, and the airline didn't know it yet, but they were standing inches from the most expensive mistake in their history. The hum of the terminal sharpened as impatience rippled through the first-class queue. People wanted boarding to begin. They wanted the man in the charcoal coat Elijah to stop being difficult. They wanted the inconvenience to look like his fault, not theirs. And so, the gate agent pushed harder. "Sir," she snapped, tapping her nails on the counter, "I'm not sure how you got this ticket, but first-class passengers don't usually create scenes." A few people nodded, relieved someone had said it out loud. Scenes, trouble, disruption. Words that carried their own quiet lineage when aimed at a man who looked like Elijah. He remained silent. The agent continued, her confidence swelling with the crowd's unspoken approval. "We have protocols," she said loudly enough for the cluster of onlookers to hear. And when someone doesn't look like they belong, she froze. She knew she'd said too much, but the damage was done. A businessman in a steel-gray blazer chuckled. "Honestly, she's just doing her job." Another added, "You can't expect every gate agent to spot a fake first-class ticket. Happens all the time." "That ticket isn't fake," Elijah said quietly. The softness of his voice made the comment land harder than if head shouted. It unsettled the people around him because restraint isn't weakness. Sometimes it's authority waiting. Greg stepped closer again. "Sir, we're going to need to see a secondary form of ID." "You already verified one," Elijah replied. "Yeah, well," Greg muttered, "we need more. More proof. More justification. More hoops. More ways to say the same silent sentence. You don't belong here." The agent leaned over the counter, squinting at the booking screen even though nothing had changed. "Look, this system is glitching now because of your ticket." Her tone sharpened, dripping irritation. "You should have just waited where we told you instead of getting in the way." A man behind Elijah scoffed. "Some people always think the rules don't apply to them." His wife whispered, "He probably used miles." As if miles could buy what Elijah owned. The boarding door beeped a chime, signaling it was ready for Group 1 boarding. The first-class passengers shifted forward, eager to leave this awkward interruption behind. The gate agent lifted her hand dramatically. "Nobody boards until this is resolved," she announced. "We can't let questionable passengers through." Questionable. The words slid into the space between them, sharp and sour. A woman with designer luggage frowned. "Can someone escort him to the proper line, please?" Her husband added. "We all paid for comfort. This is uncomfortable." It was meant to sound polite. It didn't. Across the cluster of spectators, the temperature dropped another degree. Not literally. Socially. The kind of cold that forms when people decide they don't need empathy to feel justified. The gate agent turned back to Elijah. "Step aside. This is your last warning." Elijah didn't move. Not out of defiance, but because he'd already seen exactly where this was heading. Behind him, the departures board flickered again. This time, longer. A line of red error text flashed across the far end before vanishing. No one noticed. The gate agent's patience snapped. "You know what? Fine. Greg, call upstairs. Tell security management we have a passenger refusing compliance. Hell need to be held until we confirm everything." Held. The crowd exhaled a collective release of tension. The relief of righteousness. Someone murmured, "Good." He was acting suspicious. Another whispered. Finally, Greg reached for his radio, thumb hovering over the transmit button. And at that exact moment, Elijah lifted his gaze slowly, deliberately meeting both of them with an expression that wasn't anger, wasn't fear, wasn't surprise. It was clarity. A clarity so steady it made Greg's hand pause in midair. Because what neither of them realized, what none of the onlookers had even considered, was that the system they trusted to judge him, to validate, verify, approve answered to him. Elijah's breath remained quiet, measured, precise. A storm gathering in absolute silence. He checked the time once more. 22 minutes until takeoff. 3 minutes until the tipping point. Behind the counter, the agent groaned. "Great. The system locked me out again. Why does this always happen with people like?" She bit her tongue, but the poison was already loose. Elijah didn't flinch, but the room felt different. Charged, waiting. And the people who'd mocked him only moments earlier had no idea the man they were trying to humiliate was about to hold their entire airline in the palm of his hand. The terminal lights seemed to dim without actually dimming, as if the building itself sensed a shift in equilibrium. A strange, electric stillness settled over Gate 7, quiet but undeniable, like the air right before thunder decides to speak. Elijah stood at the center of it, no longer just a man in line, but the calm axis of a gathering storm. Greg still held the radio, thumb hovering near the transmit button, but something in Elijah's expression, steady, unhurried, unreadable, made him hesitate. Not because Elijah looked dangerous, but because he didn't look threatened. And people who aren't threatened carry a different kind of power. The gate agent huffed loudly, shattering the silence. "You need to cooperate," she said sharply. "I don't care what you think you paid for. Until our system verifies you, you're not going anywhere." Elijah finally lifted his chin, the motion slow and deliberate. The kind of movement that told everyone watching he wasn't reacting, he was deciding. Passengers shifted uneasily. Some crossed their arms. Some crossed to the other side of the rope. Some clutched their boarding passes like talismans, but all of them watched him. Because you don't look away from something you can't predict. The departures board flickered again. This time longer, a subtle stutter like a withheld breath. A line of coded text blinked across the top corner of the screen, too fast for anyone to read, too strange for anyone to question. The teenage girl recording whispered, "Hes not scared." Her friend swallowed. Hes. Waiting. Exactly. Elijah's fingers moved to his coat pocket, brushing the edge of his phone, not gripping it, not lifting it, just touching it. And somehow, that single gesture created a ripple through the crowd. Sometimes power isn't loud. Sometimes it's the opposite. A quiet center, a steady breath, a man who doesn't need to justify his presence. Greg cleared his throat. "Sir, if you don't," Elijah looked at him. One look, not aggressive, not confrontational, just clean, controlled awareness. Greg's sentence died in his mouth. "You called for a system verification," Elijah said softly. "And now the system is down." He let the words settle. "You should ask why." The gate agent rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. You think this is because of you?" Her laugh came too quickly, sharp, brittle, defensive. "Our system is having a hiccup, that's all. And it started the second we scanned your ticket. So if anything, you should." But she didn't finish, because the scanning device in her hand suddenly powered off with a sad electronic sigh, as though surrendering. Then the jet bridge sensors lit up in red. Then the boarding announcement cut mid-sentence. Then the check-in kiosk 2 steps away rebooted, its cheerful startup chime turning into a distorted whine. Passengers murmured, "What's happening? Why isn't anything working? Is this a system-wide thing?" Nobody noticed. Elijah's eyes lower, not in defeat, but in contemplation. The way a composer listens not to the noise, but to the silence beneath it. He exhaled once, the quiet breath of someone done offering chances. He straightened his coat, leveled his shoulders, centered himself in the chaos. And then the smallest smile barely there, more thought than expression ghosted across his face. It wasn't amusement. It wasn't triumph. It was recognition, pure and simple. The moment had arrived. Not the moment he retaliated, the moment he stopped forgiving. He reached into his pocket and slid his phone out with the same calm one might use to check the weather. The screen lit up, casting a soft glow across his features. Behind him, the crowd pressed in closer, drawn like planets to gravity. The terminal seemed to shrink. The air thickened. Time slowed. He tapped once, twice, then brought the phone to his ear. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Greg asked instinctively, though he didn't know why he was asking or what he feared. Elijah glanced at him, not unkindly. "It's already done." On the other end of the call, a voice answered immediately, and Gate 7 held its breath. The call connected before the first ring finished. A voice on the other end, calm, crisp, razor sharp, said only one word. "Sir?" Elijah didn't raise his voice. He didn't shift his weight. He simply spoke with that same steady composure the crowd had mistaken for passivity. "Initiate lockout," he said. "Full reservation freeze. Airline X only." A pause, brief, stunned. Then the CTO exhaled, a soft breath of inevitability. "Yes, sir. Executing now." 7 seconds. That's all it took. 7 seconds for a decision made at Gate 7 to crawl through fiber lines, leap across data centers, shimmy through encrypted tunnels, and wrap itself around the beating heart of an entire airline. 7 seconds. And the first symptom appeared instantly. The departures board flickered again, but this time, it didn't recover. Rows of flight numbers blurred into static. Icons froze. Timers glitched. A red banner blinked overhead. Data sync error, global retrieval failure. Passengers gasped. Someone muttered, "What does that even mean?" Another grabbed his phone, refreshing apps that suddenly refused to load anything except blank screens. Greg stared upward, mouth slightly open. The gate agent stabbed her keyboard. Nothing responded. Then the second symptom hit. The boarding doors locked themselves with a sharp metallic thunk, accompanied by a shrill error tone. The jet bridge lights flashed angry amber. "What in the world?" the agent stammered. Third symptom. The kiosks along the wall rebooted in perfect unison. Advertising screens reset. Payment terminals died. The customer service printer spat out a single shredded line of text before giving up entirely. A wave of murmurs rolled across the terminal. Confusion, nervous laughter, growing dread. Is this a hacking thing? Did someone pull a fire alarm? Why is every terminal freezing? A man in a tailored coat approached the counter. "Excuse me, I need to board early for a connection." The agent cut him off, panic edging her voice. "Sir, the entire system just crashed. We can't board anyone." Across the concourse, a supervisor jogged over, clutching a radio bursting with static. "Status?" the agent demanded. The supervisor shook her head, breathless. "We just lost access to the central reservation hub. Every gate, every kiosk, every device. How? No idea. IT can't reach the back-end servers." Elijah listened quietly. The storm unraveling around him didn't reflect in his face at all. If anything, he looked calm, like a man remembering a map head drawn years ago. The teenage girl filming whispered, "Holy, he did something." Her friend swallowed. "No way. That's impossible." But it wasn't. Because while the terminal panicked, the voice on Elijah's phone returned. "Lockout complete," the CTO said. "And sir, this is escalating fast. They're calling our emergency line asking why they can't pull inventory." Elijah's gaze moved to the gate agent. Not cruel, not triumphant, just precise. "Let them call," he said. Passengers were gathering now, restless and confused. A pilot stepped out from the jet bridge, frustration etched across his brow. "Why is boarding halted? We're on a schedule." Greg tried to answer. "Something with the system." "Something?" the pilot snapped. "The entire airline is offline." The agent's face drained of color. She looked from the frozen screen to Elijah, then back to the screen. A terrible, dawning suspicion crept into her eyes. "Sir, did you do something to our system?" she whispered. Elijah slipped his phone back into his pocket with surgical calm. "I didn't touch your system," he said softly. "I touched mine." The words hit her like cold water. He continued, voice even unhurried. "You rely on Grant Systems Cloud for reservations, for boarding, for seat releases, for everything. You don't get to treat people how you did today and still expect my technology to carry you." A hush rippled through the cluster around them. One sentence, and the entire terminal understood. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't a glitch. This wasn't random. This was accountability, written in code. The supervisor swallowed. You own the reservation platform?" Elijah inclined his head a fraction. "Among other things." Behind them, the departures board went dark. Fully dark. A low groan swept through the terminal as hundreds of people realized something historic and terrifying was happening. Greg lowered his radio. The agent's hands trembled, and Elijah stood still, the eye of the storm head summoned with a single measured breath. "No shouting, no threats, just power," quietly reclaimed. And the airline was only beginning to understand what it had provoked. Chaos did not erupt all at once. It came in layers, slow, creeping, inevitable, until the entire terminal felt like a machine losing screws in real time. The first layer was confusion. Passengers pressed closer to the counter, clutching passports and boarding passes like lifelines. Screens above them blinked between blank, blue, and angry red. A few people tried refreshing their airline apps, only to find error 503 staring back like an accusation. The second layer was disbelief. "What do you mean every flight is delayed?" A man in a designer trench coat barked at the supervisor. She lifted both hands helplessly. "Sir, our system has lost access to all reservation data. We cannot check in passengers. We cannot validate tickets. We cannot release seats. So fix it," he snapped. "We can't," she whispered. The third layer was fear. The kind that doesn't scream, it tightens the air, thins the oxygen, makes people look around as if expecting an announcement that never comes. Flight attendants stepped out of the jet bridge in clusters, murmuring among themselves. Pilots tapped angrily at their tablets. Ground staff whispered in frantic, clipped sentences. By the time all three layers converged, the entire terminal realized the truth. The airline wasn't experiencing a delay. It was experiencing a shutdown, and it was happening right in front of Elijah. The gate agent who had humiliated him earlier now clung to the counter, knuckles white. Her voice trembled as she spoke. I don't understand. This has never happened before." Elijah didn't respond. His silence wasn't sharp or vindictive. If anything, it was restrained, almost merciful. He simply watched the system he built carry out the consequences he had unlocked. Passengers weren't so restrained. A woman waved her boarding pass angrily. "Is this a joke? My connecting flight leaves in 2 hours." A father pushed forward with 2 tired children. "Please, they need to get home tonight." "What are we supposed to do?" A man recording with his phone said quietly. "Pretty sure this is going viral already." Greg tried to restore order. "Okay, everyone, please remain calm." But calm had left the building, replaced by rising panic and growing resentment. "Call a manager!" someone shouted. "We are the managers!" the supervisor cried back. Another error tone echoed across the terminal as kiosks rebooted yet again. A flight attendant approached Elijah carefully, uncertainty clouding her expression. "Sir, the system that just went offline, is that really yours?" Elijah turned his head slightly. "Yes." She swallowed. "Then, can you fix it?" "I could," he said. He didn't add the rest of the sentence. "If I wanted to?" The gate agent's voice cracked. "Why would you do this to us?" Elijah finally met her eyes steady, unblinking, controlled. "I didn't do anything to you," he said quietly. "You made choices." I responded. The simplicity of the statement stunned her. Nearby, the teenage girl filming whispered to her friend. "He warned them without warning them." Her friend nodded. "Yeah, and now the whole airline is learning what he meant." A senior operations manager burst onto the scene, face flushed, radio blaring static. "Who's in charge here? We need access to grant systems immediately. Every terminal is down." The supervisor pointed at Elijah with a trembling hand. He's grant systems." The manager froze mid-step. His eyes widened as if someone had revealed a ghost was standing in front of him. He approached cautiously, the way someone approaches a man holding a detonator. "Mr. Grant?" "Elijah," he corrected. "Sir," the manager said, voice low and shaky, "our entire operation is paralyzed. We need your authorization to restore the backbone. Please. We're losing control of the terminal." Elijah looked past him at the crowd that had mocked him, doubted him, dismissed him. At the gate, agent shrinking into herself. At Greg lowering his eyes in belated regret. He breathed in once, measured, centered, silent. Because this was the moment the world began to understand. You cannot humiliate the man who built the system you depend on, and expect the system to save you. The consequences had only begun to unfold, and the airline was about to learn what accountability felt like when delivered by the man who wrote the code. For a full 10 seconds, no one at Gate 7 moved. Not the staff, not the passengers, not even the pilot who had been pacing angrily just moments before. Everyone stood suspended, caught in the gravitational pull of the truth, settling over them like a storm cloud finally breaking open. Elijah Grant, the quiet man they dismissed, doubted, humiliated, was not a passenger in their system. He was the system. The senior operations manager swallowed hard, his voice cracking as he attempted composure. "Mr. Grant, your platform is the backbone of our airline. Without your approval, nothing can function. Please tell us how to restore access." Greg, who had been one radio call away from detaining Elijah, now stood stiff as stone, his hand limp at his side. He tried to speak, tried to shape the word "sir," but it caught somewhere between shame and realization. The gate agent looked as though someone had pulled all the color from her body. Her bravado evaporated. Her mouth opened, trembled, closed again. She finally managed a whisper. "You own Grant Systems?" Elijah didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I built it," he said. A soft gasp rippled across the crowd. The teenage girl recording let out a stunned, whispered, "No way." Her friend added, "He literally shut down an airline like flicking a switch." The pilot stepped forward cautiously. "Sir, we didn't know." Elijah turned his head slightly, studying the man. "You weren't supposed to," he replied. "My business and my identity stay separate, but your staff made it personal." The gate agent flinched as if struck. I didn't know who you were," she stammered. "That," Elijah said quietly, "was the point." The operations manager took a breath, hands raised in a gesture halfway between supplication and surrender. "Mr. Grant, we understand there has been a grave misunderstanding, but tens of thousands of passengers rely on our flights today. Please unlock our systems." A murmur rolled through the onlookers. Some nodded. Some looked down, unable to meet Elijah's eyes. Some glanced at the agent, judgment shifting toward her now. She tried to assemble her fractured dignity. "Sir, I apologize." "I didn't mean," Elijah cut in gently, "not cruel, not sharp, simply final. You meant exactly what you said. That's why it matters." Her throat tightened. She wiped her palms against her trousers, suddenly aware of every phone camera watching. Elijah reached into his coat and pulled out his boarding pass. He held it up not for himself, but for everyone who thought paper could measure worth. "You looked at this," he said, "and decided it couldn't belong to someone like me." The agent whispered, "I was following protocol." "No," Elijah replied. "You were following prejudice." Her breath hitched. Greg's shoulders fell. The crowd's confidence dissolved. The operations manager tried again, desperation leaking through. "Sir, what do you need from us? Tell us, and we will do it." Elijah studied him for a long moment. Not the manager, the entire airline. "You will change your training," he said. "You will revise your bias protocols. And you will hold your staff accountable not just for procedure, but for dignity." The manager nodded vigorously. "Yes, absolutely. Whatever revisions you request, well, implement immediately. And," Elijah added, "you will document today's incident, fully, transparently." The gate agent closed her eyes. She knew what that meant. Her career, her reputation, everything she relied on in this building, now balanced on the very man she had tried to belittle. The manager exhaled shakily. "Yes, Mr. Grant, it will be done." Only then did Elijah reach for his phone. The crowd held its breath. He tapped once. A confirmation screen opened. A single command hovered. "Unlock system, restore access." Elijah didn't press it. Not yet. Instead, he looked at the people who had silently enjoyed his humiliation. The ones who whispered, the ones who smirked, the ones who filmed not to protect, but to entertain. "You don't have a system problem," Elijah said softly. "You have a respect problem." No one argued. No one even blinked. Then and only then he pressed the button. Somewhere in the data centers across the country, servers hummed back to life. The departure board flickered and stabilized. Kiosks rebooted with cheerful chimes. The boarding gates unlocked with a soft metallic click. The terminal exhaled as one. Systems restored, order returning, but nothing, absolutely nothing was the same, because power had not just shifted, it had revealed itself, and the airline finally understood who they were dealing with. The man they'd tried to diminish was the one who decided whether they could operate at all. The terminal slowly resumed its choreography screens, glowing back to life, scanners chirping, passengers exhaling with the shaky relief of people who didn't understand how close they came to witnessing a full meltdown of an airline. But even as the noise returned, the energy didn't. Every sound felt thinner, every movement felt careful, every breath felt like it carried the weight of what had just happened. Elijah stood at the center of the recovering terminal, untouched by the frenzy, a calm presence amid the buzz of restored machinery. Around him, the same people who had smirked, whispered, and judged, now couldn't meet his eyes. The teenage girl with the phone lowered her camera. "He didn't yell," she whispered to her friend. "Not once." Her friend nodded. "That's why it hit harder." Greg approached first, not with authority this time, but with something closer to humility. His voice came out small. "Sir, I misjudged. I shouldn't have. Elijah didn't let him finish. Not because he didn't want the apology, but because he didn't need it." "Do better," he said softly. "Next time, see the person before the assumption." Greg nodded, shame settling into his posture. The gate agent was next. She didn't step forward. She didn't speak. She simply stared at the counter, tears gathering, not dramatic, not loud, just the quiet realization that she had crossed a line that would shape her future. Elijah's gaze on her wasn't vengeance. It wasn't satisfaction. It was clarity. "Accountability," he said gently, "isn't cruelty. It's correction." Her shoulders shook. The operations manager approached with careful steps. "Mr. Grant, your car is waiting outside. We arranged expedited service," he swallowed, "and we will follow through on every policy change you requested." "I know," Elijah replied, because now the airline realized who their survival depended on. Not their fleet, not their branding, not their loyalty program, but the quiet man they tried to embarrass. Escorted not because he asked, but because the staff insisted, Elijah moved through the terminal. Passengers stepped aside instinctively, parting like water before a vessel. The atmosphere felt reverent, not fearful, respectful, not panicked. And above it all, an echo hung in the air. Dignity doesn't need to shout. Power doesn't need to declare itself. Truth doesn't need to argue. At the sliding glass doors, the cold wind from the runway brushed against him. A black sedan waited, door already open. Before getting in, Elijah paused, phone vibrating softly in his palm. A notification from his CTO, system stable, full restore complete, followed by another message. Board members just called. They want an emergency meeting about bias protocols across all client airlines. Good. Elijah typed back one sentence. Schedule it. Change doesn't happen unless someone demands it. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. But he didn't get into the car, not immediately. Instead, he walked past it, heading toward another gate across the terminal. A different airline, a different attitude, a different way of treating people. The staff there didn't question his right to be in first class. They didn't inspect his ticket under a microscope. They didn't scan his ID like they were trying to catch him in a lie. They greeted him with an easy smile. "Good evening, Mr. Grant. Welcome aboard." No spectacle, no staring crowd, no fight for dignity. Just respect, the simple thing he asked for all along. As he stepped through the jet bridge, he cast one last glance back into the concourse. Gate 7 was still buzzing, managers clustering, agents whispering, passengers recounting the moment they'd witnessed something shift in the world of travel. Not revenge, not dominance, just balance. The kind his mother had taught him to demand. He settled into his first-class seat, quiet, spacious, dignified, and breathed in the calm he had earned, not by force, but by resolve. Outside the window, the plane's wing caught the golden shimmer of the evening lights. The engines hummed. The crew prepared for takeoff. And somewhere inside that vast terminal behind him, an airline reevaluated its future. A manager drafted new policies. A former gate agent faced the consequences of her choices. A crowd replayed the moment they realized they'd misread the quiet man in the charcoal coat. A single act of disrespect had triggered a transformation far bigger than any of them expected. Because Elijah Grant didn't destroy them, he corrected them. And as the plane lifted from the runway, slicing cleanly into the sky, one truth settled like a signature written in air. When dignity is denied, justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it simply turns off the system.